Well, what's that? My AirPods have stopped working, it seems. No, there they are.
Okay, I think that's better. All right. Welcome to the Flux Dev Meeting, and bear with me while I organize myself. Someone's already got started. Thanks, Kingdon. Okay, neither Alison nor Daniel are here yet, or here at all, so let's punt on that first agendum for now. And the image update thing, I think I'm no longer reporting on that because we reached V1 Beta 1. And from my perspective, nothing much has happened since last time anyway. So Kingdon, do you want to talk about Helm Operator and Flux V1? How are they going?
Yeah, sure. There's
I can take over notes for a bit.
Not an awful lot to report, but we have done a release for Flux V1. It's 1.23.0, and it is adds support for Kubernetes 1.22.0. This is the upgrade to CRD V1 and RBAC V1 since the old versions are deprecated. And as of this morning, the Helm Operator 1.3.0 release is in progress. CI is running now and should be publishing the image shortly. That is the same change for Helm Operator. In Helm Operator, we've also done a Helm upgrade, and the upgrade comes with some breaking changes. We know at least Helm plugins may be broken completely, which we're okay with, because if people want to upgrade to Helm Controller, they're going to have to migrate away from using Helm plugins anyway. So we got feedback from one contributor who is using Helm plugins and isn't prepared to upgrade yet, and he's able to figure out the issue for himself, and he's running a fork for now. I'm not sure how many people this is going to affect, but it will give us an opportunity to remind them that they should be upgrading if they come looking for support. And I've added it to the release notes that Helm plugins, among other things, Helm plugins are known to be broken, and other things may be broken by this. So there's not.
I want to make a small note.
Yeah.
I've done a counter proposal to the patch you submitted, because I couldn't accept the patch because it would enable a lot of arbitrary settings based on environmental values, which we don't want, because it gives people a lot of freedom and configuration during runtime, which may not be in their best interest. So if he updates the patch with basically method mimicking what the CLI new method does, then I'm fine with it, as long as we don't take into account the environmental values where we shouldn't. So it could be fixed in a patch. It's just not, I'm not going to spend time on it, and it relies 100% on him going through with an alternative patch.
And I went back and forth over whether we should wait to publish a release until it could be fixed or not. And I came to the conclusion that it is probably better to let people have the growing pain. If they're really chomping at the bit for an upgrade, then they should really think about upgrading to the next generation. Maybe we'll release a 1.3.1, or maybe we'll only release a 1.4.1. Since people, the purpose of the difference is 1.3.0 is for folks who can't upgrade past Kubernetes 1.16 for some reason. So if you want the latest security patches and you're upgrading Helm Operator to 1.3.0, There has to be a vanishing number of people because if you're on Kubernetes 1.16, you're not getting security patches anyway. So from Kubernetes upstream, since that release has been unmaintained since 2019.
I failed to capture a lot of the detail of that. You need to backfill. Sorry about that. I'm terrible at taking notes. All right. We do not have other agenda for now. No, we've got one. Bug scrub. Yes, actually, I didn't hear about the bug scrub. So, Kingdon, can I ask you to do a quick rundown on how that went for my benefit?
Yeah, so we had one volunteer who did come, and it was a person who was not super familiar with Flux. They said they'd been using it for about a week, but they heard about bug scrub and they thought this would be a great way to build up some knowledge and get more familiar with the community. We spent an hour. It wasn't very painful. Even though neither of us had the triage role, but that's resolved now. So this week, tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern, which I realize now is a conflict with the company-wide all hands. So this probably won't be the schedule in the future. But tomorrow there is another bug scrub. If volunteers come, I think we might see the same gentleman again, or hopefully more folks, working on my scaling plan. It was actually really good that only one person showed up for the inaugural meeting because it allowed us to work out the issues without really wasting too much of more than a few people's time. So we work from a spreadsheet is basically the format for anyone who is interested in how does this work. I have, based on export pull request gem, there's a Ruby gem for exporting in CSV and another module that loads it into a Google Doc. The thing that made the bug scrub work the best, I think, was turning over control to the newbie and letting them drive. So I'm planning on making this a weekly event from now on. So
very cool. Thank you for taking the initiative on that, Kingdon. It sounds like it turned out to be a pretty good idea. Good stuff.
Is there a bug scrub on the CNCF calendar, by the way?
I'm not sure that it made it to the CNCF calendar. I asked Daniel to add it, but I'm not sure that he has the juice to do that directly. I'm going to check right now.
Thanks.
No, it did not make it to the CNCF calendar, but that's okay because it's going to change, the scheduling is going to change anyway, since there's a conflict at this time. So, but for this week, it is 11 a.m. Eastern, which is 3 p.m. UTC, I believe. And it's just meet in the Flux channel on the CNCF Slack. So the Zoom link will be provided closer to the event time.
Excellent. All right. Okay. I know we did a release. We often have, Stefan's there especially, we often have a rundown of what's in the most recent release. Does anyone feel up to, release of Flux 2, that is, does anyone feel up to running through that? I don't know if I know enough, but I can give it a go. Peter, do you know much about stuff that made it into the most recent release?
What's the most recent? I've been out of the loop
016, I think.
from the Flux CLI perspective because I've been working on things cross controllers.
Yeah.
Let me take a really quick look because I can. We do keep kind of a change log somewhere.
In the, oh, it's not in the release notes, is it, on GitHub? It'll be in the list.
Oh, we have the Flux trace command, which is very useful if you want to figure out what resource belongs to a certain Flux custom resource. So say, for example, you have a pod running somewhere in your cluster, you will be able to trace it back to the origin of the level of the Git repository it comes from, for example. Other than that, I know one other place I can look for. But for you guys, if you ever want to have a comprehensive overview of the latest release, look at the pinned messages in the Flux channel. Because Stefan always posts this.
Yeah, we should probably, pin.
It's on
pinned?
the.
It gets pinned.
Yeah, it's pinned, but 19 pinned. Yeah. Okay, highlights. Image automation APIs have been promoted from V1 Alpha 2 to V1 Beta 1. There are no breaking changes, and to upgrade, you simply need to change the version in the API version string. We have added conformance tests for Flux pre-releases on both for both ARM and AMD 64, but we are still lacking proper machines, especially for 32-bit ARM versions, which may be added in the future. And the Flux trace command, that was about it. It was a tiny update.
I can probably unpin some of these prior things later. That's something I was going to ask. We don't often talk about stuff that's sort of upcoming or in progress. Hida, do you want to talk a bit about the work you've been doing trying to standardize the bits of the kind of SDK bits of GitOps toolkit that are not the API? You see, that are more about the sort of programming interface.
Yeah, like the runtime package I've been working on.
That's right.
I'm very bad at coming up with short descriptive things on the spot. What I've been working on is I've been looking at, first you need a bit of history, I think. The way we have developed Flux controllers in the past was basically figuring out how things work with the idea that we will deal with tech debt later. And this has resulted in coming up with features at an incredible speed, but comes at the price of a lot of tech debt. So what I've been doing the past months actually is first gather a lot of knowledge about how other controllers in the ecosystem deal with certain things, how they rely, for example, or how they work with conditions, how they assure they follow the Kubernetes API conventions as close as possible. A lot of patterns you basically see in controllers, and I try to learn from the controllers we built ourselves, learn from the controllers in the ecosystem that are built on good practices or are built by people who have a lot of more internal knowledge about the tools we use to facilitate the whole controllers.
The cluster API ones, right? They're a good example.
Yeah, cluster API one's a good example because the folks that maintain the cluster API do a lot of controller runtime contributions. So you just know that what they do is with proper knowledge of the system they're building upon, where we often pick from documentation examples, which do not give you a proper overview, especially not if you're in the space where we're in, where our controllers also are atypical in a way, because we have longer reconcile loops due to a lot of computation that happens during one reconcile attempt. But anyhow, I gathered all that information, looked at the patterns, looked at how other projects did it, copied a bit of KP actually, because they had a lot of generic patterns that just they literally could have been put into controller runtime, but they are considered too opinionated, but they were too good to basically refabricate yourself. So I took them out, made them generic, took into account all the things we do with Flux, added support for abnormal true conditions, for example, which is a pattern you will see more often because it's a more modern way of dealing with phases, which you used to have on custom resources. Adapted to work properly with the generations you can now set in the meta v1 condition. So you can set an observed generation for a condition, and you will then know that the condition was observed for a certain version of the resource, which makes it much easier to reason about when something happened and if the resource is up to date till the last update you gave to the API server, basically. I put that all in a PR, documented a lot of runtime things, documented a lot of our APIs, which weren't properly documented. And I'm now hoping that it, once merged, will be sufficient together with the documentation, more generic documentation. I'm working with Scott with recommendations around making observations and not relying on the object as a state machine, which in the Helm controller, for example, in some cases still is a problem. And basically make really resilient controllers with common patterns and hopefully make our controllers more uniform so that it's easier for contributors to go to one controller and they think like, hey, I want to make a modification elsewhere and I don't have to think about how it is built because I know I can rely on certain packages which I always have to use because I need to do certain things with the resources we're working with. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Yeah, so this is much more to do with the GitOps toolkit, i.e. people who want to build directly on top of parts of Flux.
Yeah, and standardizing. Yeah, and standardizing how we see or what we consider best practices ourselves and really keeping ourselves to it due to having those packages in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Myself, I have not much to report about image automation things. I am mostly trying to just fix bugs, although in the last couple of days I've been doing other stuff. But
I have some concerns about the switch to libgit 2.
The switch to libgit 2 that we did.
I've been monitoring because basically part of the whole Git dependency fiasco is I've been doing studying a lot of the more common issues we were running into. So I'm also monitoring the image automation controller issues. And one thing I know is that because libgit 2 relies on OpenSSL2 or OpenSSH2, some package, it can only work with host keys in a certain format, RSA and another one. And all the other formats will end up as, I assume at the moment, without having debugged it, but by tying together bits and pieces of information, is that it will look like the libgit 2 has correctly parsed the key as presented by the host, but the data it ended with is actually garbage. So as soon as it starts doing comparisons and it receives a key which is in an exact format and it does the comparison, it fails and a connection can't be made.
That might explain a couple of those bugs there.
Yeah.
Oh God. And I know I wrote the mode had to re-implement that host key verification logic. But some of these things, because I'm currently working on end-to-end tests with Azure, so some of these things we can hopefully like cause these types of errors in the end-to-end test. So
that doesn't fix the problem I'm currently seeing to, well, kind of not ever be solved is that even with 2 implementations, we can't get to it seems impossible to support any Git server. Or at least not without telling people like, hey, you need to make your configuration insecure because we can't accept host keys in this format, or I don't know, other things. Which
But
almost,
this is only for libgit 2 users, right?
yeah, but then GoGit, of course, has other issues for like no support for the newer protocol. So with every solutions, there's a list of things like, oh, you can do this, but you can't do that, and then there still is like this circle in the middle in which you can't do nothing because both solutions don't provide the tools you need.
Yep.
It almost makes me think that we should pursue a third implementation, which is shelling out to Git.
My suggestion to Stefan last week was just, let's see if we can just throw money at the problem and see if anybody wants to fix it.
That's not going to happen.
I don't think anybody's crazy enough out there to want to do this.
I think both GoGit and libgit 2 explain why people don't want to do this, because it's just mimicking Git is just very hard.
Yeah.
Even if with best intentions and
But my initial thought there was that at least having end-to-end tests with Azure DevOps and all this will, in a way, verify all the limitations that we have.
Yeah, and
we can at least prove and say, okay, this works, this is what we expect to work, this is what we expect not to work.
Yeah, and in the source controller PR, I've been working on to validate my generic packages. Basically, I started using matrix tests for the Git implementation, so that we can basically have multiple tests with the options to skip it for certain implementations that assure that the outcome of the operations, no matter which implementation you use, is the same, which also adds a lot of proof that things are actually working as expected. But that's basically part of our tech debt. We have a lot of basic test coverage, but as soon as things start to get complicated, or you have you need to take factors X, Y, and Z into account, we don't have coverage.
Yeah, so this is going to verify, for example, integrations with ACR and like soft key vault.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And Event Hub and all that stuff. And I'm writing the infrastructure in Terraform, and hopefully it will verify also image controller and pushing to Azure DevOps and try to at least prove those types of things, and then prove that the network policies don't work with AKS, VPC, or VNet CNI and stuff like that also. So it's a very big thing, but it's going to try to cover a lot of things in one test, basically. Yeah. But yeah, it kind of doesn't solve the underlying problem. libgit 2 has its issues with C bindings, and GoGit has its issues with lack of support for Git v2. So it's like you can't really win.
Yeah, that's why I think
the only way to win is to contribute whatever it is lacking to one or other of those libraries, which is a pretty big job.
I think the best would be to pursue libgit 2 because it's closest to the main Git project. And the thing with the host keys can be solved by not relying on that package, but on another package, which is like the version 0.7 or something, which has a support for a wider range of keys. So I think it's just historical dependencies, which now, especially in the system, ecosystem of encryption, where RSA was a long time the standard, and now slowly has started to be replaced with ECDSH, I think, is that the libraries are outdated. So if they would fix that, then our host key problem, for example, would be solved. And it would benefit a lot of other people too.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have a sort of update on work in progress? Max, did you did a PR that got merged recently, or at least in the last few weeks? Am I right? Am I getting that right?
I guess so, yeah, and customized controller. I must admit, I don't remember what it was about. Oh yeah, the events when the health check fails are now enriched with the actual health check that failed, like the status. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Then they contain the actual error message from case status. And those events that in the last check did not fail are now excluded from this event, so you won't see them anymore. Because before, like all the health checks were mentioned, even though only one of them failed. So yeah, that was nice.
Was that your first PR?
Yeah, it was the first actual improvement.
Good stuff.
It was a great experience, by the way.
Good. Oh, thank you for saying so. That's cool. Very good. Can I ask Daniel, who has now joined, is there anything you'd like to add to the agenda, table of agenda, or would just like to start talking about?
Yeah, sorry for being late earlier.
Okay.
So I have a little update on the docs and the website.
Brilliant.
So in the last blog post, I wrote a bit of an update. What happened last month, it was quite a bit. We added in, we made changes to the adopters page. We moved the Flux legacy home operator docs to the site as well. We added integrations page. So if you have more Flux extensions and integrations you want to add, we have a dedicated page for this. And it would be nice at some stage, but I would need help from others to spell this out more clearly, like what level of integration all these extensions have. Right now it feels a little placeholdery still, but we'll get there. With a current contributor section, we updated the theme, and what's going to happen next, what I'm working on right now, is adding some facts about Flux to the main page, so people just knows all the great things it does. So that's work in progress, and we're working with a web designer to help us add like a carousel of all the adopters people on to the main page as well. That's what's happening there.
Nice one. All right, let's flip back to. All right, so if no one else has got other stuff to talk about, I can give you all 20 minutes odd back in your day.
I'm just going to mention
Make a
that
copy of something. Yeah.
the multi-arch support I saw that was mentioned, we also have an ARM32 cluster now, and it's growing. We're up to 9 Raspberry Pi nodes, which I've found can't really manage themselves because of memory limits and etcd. So I'm now externalizing etcd. It's a K3s cluster, and it's going to have a MySQL backend.
Yep, that'll make another interesting test data point, won't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Did you just glance down at the Raspberry Pi cluster when you were talking just now? I thought I saw you kind of. Aha, there we go.
You can hear it as white noise in your background. I think it has the fans on, right? Or not, Kingdon?
No, the fans you hear are my x86 cluster, ARM64 or AMD 64. They're 3 machines.
This is why everything behind me, just like the server cabinet, is shut down at the moment. I couldn't stand the noise anymore.
Excellent. Okay, folks, thank you very much for coming along today.
See you.
We'll see you next time. Cheerio.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.